And honestly, this is the easiest recipe probably you ever made, and it's absolutely amazing because the ingredients we've got here on the table are pretty much in season. So that's the idea. Simple ingredients, simple recipe, but really tasty and efficient. Now let's get into it. So for this recipe, you need the following ingredients. Obviously, tomatoes, pomodoros, garlic. We're only gonna use 1 clove of garlic, so don't worry, it's not gonna be the whole thing. 1 clove because it's raw garlic, you don't wanna go crazy. We've got basil, fresh basil, as fresh as you can. This is probably not the freshest I could, well, that's the freshest I could get, but try to get it as fresh as possible. We've got extra virgin olive oil, salt, pepper. Also have some fresh bread because we're gonna get this into the oven. There are multiple ways of kind of dealing with this. You can grill it, which is probably the original recipe, or we can make it like simple or as simple as it can be. Get it straight into the oven. A bit of extra virgin olive oil, salt, pepper. These tomatoes that we've got here on the table are obviously various sizes. You can use any tomatoes that you prefer. This will probably give us about 2 portions. Bear in mind that usually bruschetta is served as a starter or even appetizer, so you don't need to go crazy. Now, all I want to do, I just want to cut this into cubes. And to be honest, for this recipe, tomatoes that are a bit firmer work better because they tend to keep their shape a bit better, because you want to kind of like see the final result onto the crusty bread. Remove the core part if you want to. I mean, these tomatoes are tiny, so it's not necessarily that big of a problem. The bigger the tomatoes, the bigger the core, so you might want to remove it. In this situation, it's not going to affect us a whole lot. You want to keep all this juice that comes out of the tomatoes, because this will be like more or less the sauce that will soften slightly the bread once it's out of the oven. So this is really important. Make sure that you don't lose any of this juice that is coming out of the tomatoes. Okay, so our tomatoes are ready to go into the bowl. So we'll transfer everything into the bowl. As I said, try to get all the juice in there. Well, when the bread comes out of the oven, it will be pretty firm, but as soon as you kind of like put that tomatoes on it, it will become softer and you'll have the perfect balance between crispiness and softness in a way. Okay, so tomatoes out the way, pretty easy, nothing complicated. Now, 1 clove of garlic. If you want to replace the garlic with something else, if you feel like garlic is not for you, it's too strong, maybe you can replace this with red onions. So you don't want to have only tomatoes on their own. So replace the garlic with a bit of red onion. It kind of does the job, but ideally you want to stick to the garlic. Now, I'm just going to cut this in half. And the idea is that I'm going to remove the core of the garlic. This is the part that is kind of peppery. Now, I got used to it when working in an Italian restaurant, removing it all the time, especially when using fresh garlic in recipes like this. But if you are to cook with garlic, obviously it doesn't matter. But for using raw garlic, it's probably a good idea. Using raw garlic, is pretty strong, so you don't want to go with more than one. Even one probably is a bit over the top, but it works for me. If you feel like a whole garlic clove, it's a bit too much, probably just reduce that to half. So just chop these as fine as you can. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Now, all this garlic will go over the tomatoes. We need some extra virgin olive oil in there. It's important to have a good quality of extra virgin olive oil. So we got here some good quality extra virgin olive oil, and we're going with about 3-4 tablespoons straight in. I know it probably looks a lot, but it really works well in these kind of recipes. And in combination, it gives like that Italian taste, in combination with all the other ingredients. Now, when it comes to basil, fresh leaves, you can chop it. I tend to probably break it apart by hand. It doesn't really matter as long as you get some fresh basil in there. Don't replace this, or don't try to replace it with dry basil. It will get the basil flavor, but it won't have the same vibe. Now, as I said, in worst case scenario, replace it with dry basil, but I would stick to this kind of like method, adding fresh leaves. 4 or 5 basil leaves, and just break them by hand. Okay, so once we got everything in there, we're gonna put some salt and pepper. Just pinch of pepper and a pinch of salt. I've got here rock salt because it's a bit more romantic, but trust me, you can use normal salt without any issues. Okay, now that we've got everything mixed together, Give these about 5 minutes, or at least the time you get the crusty bread into, well, you get the bread into the oven, because this will enhance the flavor of the tomatoes, and all these flavors combined, the garlic, the extra virgin olive oil flavor, the basil, obviously salt and pepper, will get something amazing. So that's why I would say, and I suggest, get these first, give them at least like 5 minutes, and after that, go into the rest of the stuff, like getting the bread into the oven. I do like to slice the bread myself because I like to get it slightly thicker. So we're going slightly thicker than normal sliced bread. Not a whole lot. Now, if you want to go in angle, obviously you can, but I'm just keeping it simple, going straight. And probably that's enough for the mixture I've got, and I'm just going to line them down in a tray. As I said, probably the original method is, to grill the bread, or you can use even a griddle pan and just grill them that way. I'm going to get them straight into the oven. It just works best for me. Rock salt, so basically seasoning this bread, and a good drizzle of extra virgin olive oil on each one of the slice. And now we're going with this into the oven for about 5 minutes into the oven at 200 degrees Celsius. Now, obviously keep an eye on them and just make sure that, they don't burn or anything like that. You just want to have a touch of color on them. You don't want to cook them all the way through because the bread is already cooked. All we want to get is slightly crispier. So, into the oven with it. Now, about 5 minutes later, we got what we needed. This is crispy, but not at the point that it's rock solid to break all your tooth. And as you can see, the tomatoes release even more juices after adding the salt and the pepper, because obviously the salt kind of extracts all that juice. And now we've got a nice juicy mix. So these go straight on top of the sliced bread. Try to get a mixture of everything. And my friends, this is Bruschetta al Pomodoro. Nice, simple, delicious, perfect for this kind of weather, especially now with the tomatoes and basil being more and more in season. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And this was Kitchen Draft for today. I will see you in the next one.